On today's question of faith, is it really the most wonderful time of the year? Hey everybody, this is Question of Faith. I'm Deacon Mike Hayes. I am the Director of Young Adult Ministry here in the Diocese of Cleveland.
And I'm Father Damian Ference, the Vicar for Evangelization.
I'm Terri Yohman, the Director of Marriage and Family Ministry.
Welcome back, Terri.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So is it really the most wonderful time of the year? So people struggle with the holidays, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And, of course, there's that song, "It's the most wonderful time of the year." Ding dong. Oh, the puking from Will Ferrell. Yeah, the SNL skit. It's hard not to think of that. But it could be and it could not be. And that's
Right.
why we asked the question, because it depends on where you are in life and what your situation is and what you've gone through. But we're here today, and we brought Terri in because she's got a background in family counseling, that for some people, the holidays are very difficult to navigate.
The holidays difficult for you?
Yeah. I visited the cemetery today. My mom died 23 years ago, 2 days ago. It was November 24th of 2001, and I actually visited her grave on Sunday, too, on my way down to Ashland, but yeah, my last two Thanksgivings when my mom was alive were in a cancer home. So, and the last Thanksgiving, she was down to 78 pounds. So, yeah, I miss her, and my dad's gone too.
Yeah.
So I don't have a huge family. So for some people, they love the holidays, and I enjoy Thanksgiving. I enjoy Advent and Christmas, but it's a little different because of my own experience of loss and grief.
Yeah, similar for me. My mom was last week. It was 4 years for her. So the anniversary of her
What
death
day?
was last week, the 20th. And then my dad is Happy Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving will be the 6th anniversary of his death.
Did either of your parents die on actual Thanksgiving, or there's the week of, or what?
Week of for my dad, yes, for sure.
Before or after, do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Marion, my wife's mother, was the same time of year also. And then my college roommate died first week of December. We put our dog down last year, the December, So it's if I can get to December 15th, I'm good.
Oh, that's good.
If I don't get to December 15th, we got a hard time.
How about you, Terri? What do you make of all this?
Well, I'm always fascinated because thanatology, the study of all of that, physical, psychological, about death and how it affects us and what we go through, I'm always just curious about it. And so I like to think of what people believe and how they rely on their spirituality really can help and support them as they go through grieving process. So for me personally, my parents are still alive. Thank the good Lord. My husband lost his father a couple of years ago, so that's always tough. And I think everybody, and the other piece, I think when we talk about grieving or loss, it doesn't always mean death. We could have somebody who has experienced dementia during that year, or like you're talking about being, down in weight. So your mother was still alive, but there was decline, there were changes. And so I think there are those parts, or loss of relationships even. You can be grieving the loss of a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a good friend. It can be all kinds of things. The pet, like you were talking about, Mike.
Sure.
There's many things that go into it, and I'm always really
Job loss, all those kinds of things.
A move, or people who used to live close to you move.
Yes.
Like you say, a breakup could be a change in life. Maybe you were a student and now you're trying to get a job, or you're out of a job, or you lost whatever. You just said the job loss thing. Yeah, there's a lot of things you could grieve.
All of those things, I think that they all play into how it impacts us and whether or not we're going to have a good holiday or a bad holiday. I think the one big thing that I would say would be when it is difficult, that you realize that you need to be gentle with yourself and really be careful, because I used to Susan LaSure was her name. Whenever I was in counseling and some of the bereavement things, she always talked about grief as being a suitcase, and it was a grief case that you put under the bed, and when there was a loss, that would come out, and every grief you ever had was in that case, and it would explode. There's somebody else that talks about trying to push a ball underwater, and you keep trying to hold that ball down, and no matter how hard you push, at some point the ball's going to come out and fly open, fly up in the air, and the mess is everywhere.
Yeah, that speaks to me. That's a good one. I like that image. Yeah.
Right, and so those different images of what we do, and I think we can fall into this trap of, like we said, is it the most wonderful time of the year, where we're trying to put a bow on it and make it look pretty, and that we're doing, oh, we're great, this is lovely, and we've got the smile on our face. And we tend to be idealistic people, and then when we're not having it, we're sad because we don't have it. So I think it's important to think of all of those things, too, that come into play to make it not the most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And we don't want this show to be Debbie Downer, but what we do want to do is address reality. So one of the ways you make your way through grief is by acknowledging it, and also then showing gratitude for what you do have or what you did have.
Right.
And a lot of times the fact that you miss someone or you feel heartache is a sign that you've loved and you've loved well, because if you didn't, you wouldn't feel any of those things. So I think of those things when I think of Thanksgiving, and as we move, through Advent and toward Christmas, like that the Lord's going to come again, that there is meaning to life, and those I just wrote a note to my seventh grade teacher. She wrote me a little note and gave me a little gift, and I wrote her back, and I said, I miss my mom and dad, but I hope to see them again. I look forward to that day, And in the meantime, the fact that the Lord was not born in a castle or a palace or a sterile hospital, but in a pretty messy place surrounded by animals that probably stank, gives me hope, because that's where the Lord wants to be. He wants to be born into the messiness of our lives too. And he hasn't abandoned us or forgotten us. That's the beauty of the incarnation. Like, he knows what it's like to feel grief and sorrow and pain, and he's with us in those things. And so is the church, and like the comfort of the Eucharist and all that, and going to Mass, those things are good and healthy and holy.
Yeah. And if we didn't have grief and sorrow and tough things in our life, we wouldn't know what the good things are in our life either.
Right. You can't celebrate the mountains if you don't have the valleys.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't fast, you can't feast.
Right.
Yeah. Good one.
Come
for
on, get
Thanksgiving.
more cliches. Let's go.
Well, I think too, when we're in that place, we have a tendency to believe also that as a year passes, it's going to get easier. And they used to say there were like these stages, and if you could get to the part where it was acceptance, and people get real angry because they're like, acceptance, that's not like I'm accepting, like I'm fine with it, and that's not what it means. It just means that you realize that this loss has happened or this change has occurred, and what does my life look like now?
Yeah,
how do I change
real.
it?
Yeah,
Yep, this is the reality of where I'm at.
My friend talks about wakes that way. He goes, I have to go to see it. This is real now. I was like, oh, that's a good way to look at that.
Right.
And
yeah.
let me say this, too, because I was with Father Mark Riley yesterday. We were talking about our parents, and I was telling him how grateful I am that Catholics bury the dead and we have cemeteries, because at least I have a place to go. Like, I can go and be where my parents' bodies are. I know they're not there anymore, but their bodies are, and I await the day of the resurrection, and it's nice just to have, because we're bodily creatures, right? So it's not just thinking abstractly, okay, my parents are with the Lord now in heaven, which I hope and believe they are, but I still miss them, and their bodies are in the ground, and I like to go where that ground is and spend time there,
Nice.
Yeah.
Mine are out of state, so
I know that makes it tricky.
Yeah, no, but that's okay. In my home, when I walk in, there's a picture of my mom and dad right in the front foyer when we walk in.
Yeah.
And my wife knows not to move it. She's like, and if it moves just an inch, I know. It's the one thing I'm kind of like anal retentive about. I'm like, nope, that stays there. And it's one of the first things I see when I come in every day. So that works for me.
Well, and how we remember people also, like it's a very healing piece. And I really appreciate what you said, Father Damian, about the belief that we have about heaven and the communion of saints. Like all of that, there are many people that are Christian that don't have that part. They only believe in that personal relationship with Jesus and not the communion of saints. And it's like, this is huge. Like it's a very different reality when you do believe that the veil is really thin. And that's like, to me, it's like, I've always felt that. I've always just like felt that the veil is so thin and they're right there, and that we do have that sort of ability to honor them and still be speaking with them and know that they're with us in some ways.
I made a retreat maybe a year after my dad died. It was my annual retreat. I was out in the desert in Arizona, and it occurred to me for the first time, and I probably learned this somewhere in theology class, it was head knowledge, but it wasn't heart experiential knowledge at that point, but it was that wherever Jesus is, his church is. And his church, of course, is here on earth, church militant, then church suffering in purgatory, and church triumphant in heaven. So that means wherever Jesus is, his church is. So wherever Jesus is, if my mom and dad are part of the body of Christ, there they are too. So anytime I'm celebrating Mass or receiving communion, and like I'm also in communion with the communion of saints, because Christ is intimately espoused to his church, and that gives me great hope too. It's a great consolation and a comfort, as you say, that if you communion or the Eucharist isn't part of your tradition, that would be something you'd miss out on. So the communion of saints are awesome. And we talked about this the other day, Deacon Mike. I think it was last Tuesday. We were talking about when our parents died, and a couple other people had parents die in November. It's not a bad time to die, because that's when, as a church, we pray for the dead. And the trees are, losing their leaves, at least around this part of the country. So,
and sometimes other families around who remember and things like that too.
Right. I think too, the one of the tasks that I would say for folks, like not only like relying on your spirituality and your faith to help you with that, but one of the challenges is that we really have to stop and acknowledge the illusion that we're in control. And that it makes you look at that you are not in control. And that's a big struggle for a lot of people, that they have to stop and do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Terri, what would you say to, let's say, a family or a couple or a person who seems to have everything right now, that their life looks like a Hallmark card, and they're thinking, I've been blessed, I don't really have any suffering. How do I think about other people's if I haven't gone through this myself? Because some folks, God bless them, like they're doing great, and it looks like the Hallmark movie, and everything, people are alive and they're healthy, and things seem okay. What do you say to that?
I guess my question would be, what's their goal? Are they trying to, are they stopping and thinking about this, we're perfect and we're doing great, so I don't have to worry about that at all? And sometimes I think folks like that could be moving through and hurting other people, not even knowing it, just because of statements you make, because we really never know where someone is with their grief, if they've had, pregnancy losses or anything. So I think it's one where we would want people to stop and be sensitive. And then even just if you're curious about that, talking with someone about what their loss is, how do we build empathy? How do we learn to stand in someone's shoes? And really just listening to what they're willing to share. I would just like to hear what that was like, what it was like if you found somebody that you loved. And I think of those things of being able to realize for yourself, if I was driving and there was a car wreck and I had to be there and that was this traumatizing loss, I may not have the loss, but I can still realize that if that was someone I loved, it would be traumatizing and I would be so sad. So drawing on what their gifts and talents are and being open to that. And I think being open to just allowing people to share or do something different. If you have someone, especially at the holidays, that's always been at your Christmas parties, that's always been something, but that they had a breakup or their marriage is in struggle or something like that maybe not to be so hard on them you need to come out, come to the party, come to this, just step back and allow them to say no, because they might not be willing to do it or be ready for something like that. And it makes it harder for the person who's struggling to keep putting people off, because they know they're just going to be faking it if they come out, and it's more painful, and they're risking losing a friendship potentially.
And then maybe saying, can I connect with you in another way? If you won't come here, can we just hang out, the two of us, get some coffee?
If it's always been this experience and this has always been what it is, maybe we need to try something different. Can we go to a movie instead of doing this, because this part's really hard for me? So finding something different to do.
Yeah, and sometimes people think that they know what to say or that they have all the answers, and they don't. I always say I want to write a book, 101 Stupid Things I've Heard at Funerals. She looks great. No.
Yeah.
She doesn't look great. She's dead, right?
It's
or whatever, all these kinds of things happen all the time.
Well, I think of that all the time, and maybe priests don't get to do that, but for a lot of people, you can think of all of the dead people you've ever seen, that what that looks like. And I think too, is as parents, we used to have funerals for our fish, for anything that died. We would have these whole elaborate things to help my children grieve, to learn how to grieve. And I think there are people that haven't had losses that maybe don't know how to grieve well. And what I would say was, if you're going to experience grief at some point, right? And so if you haven't had the experience and you're not sure, or this is the first year that you have, please reach out, because we have so many books and just different resources that we can give to people and skills that they can pick up to put in their toolkit. that they can go to then when they are experiencing it.
Yeah, and sometimes people who seem to have everything together may not.
Oh,
Right.
And so
most
it's important to
definitely
talk
not.
to people when you're struggling.
Right,
So
right. Rely on friends if it's the right thing.
Yeah. And we know the types. Hi, I'm highly depressed.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
You know,
The smile. There's a commercial that's circulating right now. I see it when I'm watching the weather, and she's got the little stick with the smiley face, and she's just holding it, walking around, and it's like that's what it is for a lot of people in the holidays.
Yeah.
So.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so there are places in the diocese, we could do our church search, and there are places in the diocese that kind of think about this and kind of set up like a little blue time at the holidays.
Yes, absolutely. We have several parishes now. We've started, St. Mary's Hudson forwarded us their resources quite a few years ago during the Year of the Family. So for about 5 years, we started Blue Christmas, which a lot of non-denominational churches do that as well. But it's it's typically the first holiday without someone that you love, and it's like the longest day. But they have a prayer service. Actually, at St. Justin Martyr, Beth Rossetti's heading up a whole series for us for the diocese, and there's going to be 3 or 4 different nights she has. It's linked on our website, and they're going to do a meal at one of them. But a lot of places just bring people together and light candles just so that you know you're not alone.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll put all that in the show notes. St. Justin Martyr. We've been there for
Yeah.
a couple meetings. And
So Father Josh Korak is the new administrator. Deacon Tim Schell
Yep.
and his wife Sandy Schell, one of the best names of all time. They work there. It's in Eastlake, and it's a happening place right now.
Yeah.
That whole west.
It's so easy to get to off
it
the
is,
highway.
yeah.
Like, I love that part. Like,
Although, if you get off, 91 it's easy, but if you get off at 305, the light there, because I lived at Mary Magdalene during my Rome, it was a 3-minute light.
Yeah, oh,
So
yeah.
you could like check your email and
I never noticed
do
that.
some grief counseling. Yes.
While you're there.
Yeah.
Hanging
But you're
out.
right, it is. It's just north of that ball stadium, the baseball
Pretty
stadium
easy.
there.
Exactly. All right, so St. Justin Martyr, and we'll throw St. Mary Hudson in there as well for church search this week. And then readings this week. This is the first Sunday of Advent, of course. And, I like the places in both the Gospel and in the second reading that talk about heart. It's sort of like this is a time to take heart, if you would, Beware at your hearts, do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness. I said, well, clearly Luke's Gospel knows about holiday parties. We basically can get all tied up in, the parties that we get involved in and the ways that we kind of distract ourselves from what's really important by, kind of getting together. Not that parties are bad, but we can get distracted by them. Sometimes they become stressful too, right? Oh my God, I have 5 parties to go to. And then you're like, wait a minute, I'm arguing about a party, you know.
Right.
And why are we having the party in the first place? But for the Christmas holiday, so yeah.
Yeah, I think it's easy when you may be experiencing grief and not even knowing it. This is why I think a lot of college kids get in trouble with heavy drinking and the hookup culture is because maybe they're sad, they miss home,
Yes.
and it's easier just to numb the pain by hooking up or getting drunk. And Luke is reminding us here, that's not going to be good for you, because your real desire is to be inebriated on the Eucharist, right? Like the blood of Christ, and to be loved and to be loved well in a chaste way, whether you're married or whether you're single, whatever it is, like to really be loved and understood and seen. So sins that we fall into mostly because we're going to the wrong well to get filled up on what we really desire.
I used to say in college campuses, now you bring that up, is that every November people start to get nervous because finals are coming. But more importantly, the finals weren't really the hard part. The hard part for them a lot of the times was that they have to say goodbye to their friends. And they, and they're going home, which that's fine, right? They're going to go home and they're going to see their family again. But they don't know how to say goodbye to each other. And so they don't say goodbye to each other. They just do mean things to each other. They get into a fight so they don't have to say goodbye. And so I used to say every time I would do something at the end of the semester on saying goodbye well, say goodbye well, have one last time out, have one last lunch, have one, all those kinds of things, especially for seniors. I think it was important. But, I think we forget that, we have a hard time breaking away from the average things that we do when we're coming toward the end of something.
Any thoughts on first Sunday of Advent, Terry?
I like the part about the anxieties of daily life and that the day not catch you by surprise. And I think of that when I was looking at this of the lens of bereavement and grief, just that we need to make sure we're saying our I love yous and our hellos and, well, goodbyes may be well, and figuring that out. I think that can be a trap for people, because if that last goodbye isn't done well and something does happen, I think of that and this is when my grandmother, I used to take my grandma to church, and she had me go to the grocery store, and I was supposed to be going on a date, and I was so upset because I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go do my grandma's shopping, and this was so frustrating. And that was the last time I saw her, and she died the next day. And it took some years to really work through that grief. So that line jumped out at me, that those anxieties of daily life and what you're doing and what you're worrying about versus what you should be worrying about, and taking it to God.
I know very little French, but isn't it true that au revoir is till we meet again?
I believe so.
Which is a nice way. Yeah. So it's not a goodbye. It's not a hard line like goodbye. It's done. It's until we meet again. Whether you'll see them again on the other side of the veil in heaven, or I'll see you again after the Christmas break or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. How are you spending the holiday? How are you spending Thanksgiving, I guess? I'm
heading to Philadelphia. I've got some friends out there. I'll see our old bishop, Archbishop Perez, one of my priest friends. Got family that has invited me out, so I'll be hanging out with people in Philly this weekend. Nice. How about you,
Terry?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm heading to Millersburg, where my parents are from. This
great.
is the first time they're back, and it seems like 20 years. We moved them home from Florida. They were usually in Florida from October through May, and so this is the first Thanksgiving to actually have in person. So
is that Amish country, Millersburg?
Mm-hmm. It is.
So will you get Amish pie?
No, we will make pie.
Oh.
That's great. Yeah. And then Mike and Marion used to. So when we first moved away,
did you just speak yourself in the third person?
Yes, I did.
I was thinking that too. I was like, wait, is there another Mike?
Okay.
So my wife and I will be staying home. So what we have done in the past is we used to go home when we had family in New York. We would go home when we first moved to Buffalo, and then here we would go home at Thanksgiving. My wife has a family Christmas party like first or second week of December, and then we would go home again at Christmas and maybe even stay to New Year's. And it just got too much, It was just there was 3 times, going back and forth. So finally we made the rule: Thanksgiving is Mike and Marion's holiday to spend by ourselves. And so now, and sometimes we cook, but the last couple of years we've just ordered food from Whole Foods and ordered the Thanksgiving dinner from Whole Foods. We just have to reheat it then. And that's a nice, relaxing time for us then. Then we can spend more time with each other, so it's good.
Do you dress up? Are you getting sweatpants or what? Or like mid-casual or?
Mid-casual,
okay.
I would say. Yeah, we don't. It's not National Dirtbag Day,
Okay.
It's,
do you watch the parade?
No.
We do, yeah. That's big for Marion. That's I kind of do like the dog show. We don't make a habit of watching it, but I'll watch at least one of the football games usually. But yeah.
Parade and the dog show.
Parade and the dog show. Dog show's kind of a new thing. The parade was always on in my house when I was growing up.
I remember watching Best in Show, which is based on the dog show, and that's hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's a great movie.
Yeah, and I just saw on X or Twitter yesterday that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is 40 years old or 30 years old
it's
or
gotta
something.
Be, yeah.
With Steve Martin and John Candy.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, that's funny. It's really funny.
Exactly. All right, so happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, and make sure you reach out to people. Make sure people have a place to go.
Yeah,
Amen.
yeah. If you know someone who doesn't have a place to go, invite them over.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have this and a whole lot more next time here on Quest for Faith.